Did you really think I wasn't going to give him a tongue? Of course I was going to give him a tongue. In fact, I gave him two. One little one that can fit nicely inside his mouth, and one larger one with a couple of joints that can slither around and it's just creepy. And now it's time to give him a body and transform this armless, legless, footless thing into, well, something more. Alright, day one. I'm going to start where I always do, the frame. Here's what I'm starting with, so I just need to add a couple of joints for the elbows, waist, and wrist. Let's get going. Alright, and so after some tidying up and colouring in all the white parts that will likely be visible when it's complete, here's what he's looking like so far. So things are coming together. The joints are quite strong, so that's good. Everything's quite solid. These can drop down. Next, we just have to add the waist joint. Alrighty, so on to day 3, and I'm getting a little bit behind now. Really gonna have to pick up the pace if I wanna make some progress in this video on Venom. So before I can attach the waist joint to his body and glue everything in place, I'm gonna have to do the neck and then some trap pieces. Just because it's gonna be much easier to manage that stuff when it's not stuck. I may need to make his neck joint a little bit stronger too. Oh, and I had a really cool idea for his traps where they're actually going to be articulated. So I've got like this structure piece here and a little ring, so when it's around his shoulder section, it'll be able to articulate individually. So then that way, when his neck bends, the traps can bend with them, so you're not left with like this huge ugly gap when the neck moves forward that previous models have always had. So I'm just going to have this part sitting forward on the frame like this. This will be the throat, I guess. And a neat trick I do to make everything look a little more organic is I cut out an arch in the bottom of his jaw for the throat section to kind of slot into. I think it's cool. I started doing this with my last few models and it adds a lot to how well the head sits on top of the neck. And because it sits a little bit deeper, you can look up a fair bit before it looks like his neck is being disconnected. Then I wrap this piece around the back, making up the bulk of the neck. Ten and a half hours work for this. Well, I don't know how I feel about that. Alrighty, day 4, and I got really distracted today. On this guy, actually. I was just looking at Thanos and I really wanted to just get his neck done, and he's looking quite good. Like, I got these trap pieces that are just gonna kind of really start to bulk him up, and I spent too much time. Like, I did make some progress on this Venom drawing though. I realized that I got to the point where I could no longer avoid just not having the color scheme for him figured out, and so I finally figured out a way of coloring him that will suit my taste. I just have a real tough time focusing on one character at a time. I kind of just want to do like a little piece here and there. I just got to do better tomorrow on day 5. And day 5 is going to be all about the fingers, just getting all the little pins glued as quickly as I can, so hopefully they have time to dry while I work other things, and alright, so now it's day 6 and I've done 4 fingers and a thumb, and I'm just going to move on to making some of the frame now because I am absolutely sick of making all these tiny little tubes of paper and fiddling around with this stuff. Okay, so it's time to make the elbow portion of Venom's forearm here, and I really like this little bump down here where his elbow bone kind of just sticks out a little bit further, and so I wanted to recreate that with the structure piece, so I actually elevated it a little bit here, so when this folds down and then meet with the other side, you'll see that, shit, I forgot to account for the little gap in the paper. Alright, fixed. So now when this folds over, this little part at the bottom will fold down. Bam! Here it is. And I added this little darker grey vein here just because. So now basically these parts are just going to fold together to give that curve to the ulnar bone on the back of his arm, and then bam. And so now I can see that the shape of the forearm, this curve here that I wanted, actually lines up pretty closely with my drawing here. Okay, so here all the fingers are done, and I'm just sliding them on this single pin that is going to be glued around on this piece of card like this, sort of really starting to shape the hand. And then the wrist, we just go back in here like this. And then we have a thumb here, which was a pain in the ass because you have like this little tube here so it can pivot up and down, and then you have this one here so it can move there, and then, oh, what do you know, it bends here too. And that'll kind of just like come together like this. And then day 8, and now the hand has finally come together. I've got most, the stuff's there. It's got his fingers, he can point at you, and he can do stuff now. It's that'll do. And it's time to do the structure piece for all of his main muscles. Here we have the bicep, the tricep, and then the forearm piece. And done. Of course, I did the same for the other side too. Oh, and the final structure piece will be this one, which is kind of going to be like the rib cage sort of section. And that'll just start to wrap around here like this. And to conclude my work on Venom for this video, I added the final structure pieces for both of his pecs here, as well as his lats on the back here, and then I also thickened up these trap pieces so you can really start to get an idea for how big they're going to be. So despite how much longer it took to actually get to this stage of making him, I'm very happy with how everything is looking so far, and it's just cool with all the structure pieces added. I can really start to get an idea of how he's going to compare to everybody else. Like, here's how big he would be compared to Thanos. Here he is next to Goku, a more regular sized human, I suppose. Katakuri, Kenshiro, Doomfist, Cell, Soups, and Spider-Man. So it turns out I really suck at working. I am not efficient at all, and I knew this already based on how my days go, but seeing it laid out the way it was in this video is eye-opening. So yeah, my artwork may be good, but it doesn't matter if I'm just not creating much. So while somebody else might have to work to improve their artwork alone, I have to work to improve my work ethic. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. Nonetheless, Venom is looking good. It's really cool to see how he fits with all the other models I've made, and I can really start to get a clear picture of how that's going to turn out. Okay, so that's it. The video's over. But you might have noticed there's still a little bit of time left. And that's because there's going to be a new segment, Comment of the Week. I see a lot of comments on my videos that I appreciate more than I can convey with words. So each week, I'm going to pick out the one that I love the most. And the very first one goes to JCMMA. And that's not just for this comment, but for every comment. I always notice them on my videos, as you can tell by my replies, and I just really appreciate the extra effort you go into to pay a compliment. And you also seem to pick out this specific thing in each video that I am proudest of. So, it's nice to see somebody else looking at my videos the same way that I do. So, make on, and thank you for your continued support. I do appreciate it. Oh, and people, if I don't do this every week, dislike, unsubscribe, and report me to the police, because lies are a crime. Bye!